Hi, my name is Hien. I've been surviving inflation for the last 10 years. I've, barely without a full-time job at all, and just working, making maybe $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And I'm gonna show you how you can scrape by and actually thrive in this economy with rising prices. I know that it's been hard trying to get by when you're trying to be a good steward, hard worker, and it's just not working out. It's just no matter how hard you work, you still feel like you can't make enough. So I know that the problem is right now is like there's a lot of rising cost, gas is high, and there's just not enough to buy food. You make your bills, you got homeowners insurance, you got rent that's increasing, and all of this is just eating you up, and you just can't figure it out. Like, why am I doing something wrong? I'm working hard, but I'm just not making it. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe there's something going on, and I kind of went through the same struggles too. All right, I would try to save. I couldn't save, and then eventually things happen, like an accident or a medical bill or an emergency. A car breaks down, and then you start to get into debt. And on top of that, they're charging you interest, and then you barely scraping by already, but you have to get into debt in order to come out of it, and then you have an extra payment to make, and it just seems hard to get by. After a while, it kind of feels like it was just all rigged against us, and we are playing this rigged system that we can't opt out of. We're taxed on our income, we're taxed on our spending, and then when we own a property or have a mortgage now, we get taxed on the property taxes, and on top of that, paying interest on that mortgage, and then the prices are rising, so in a sense, there's a hidden tax from inflation, and so we had to use credit cards, which then perpetuates the inflation because there's now more money floating around, and we're paying interest on that credit card. And you can see how it's just, we can't really get out of this economic enslavement, is what I call it. All right. So what do we need to do? Well, first it's just understanding what causes inflation. Well, as the government prints money to, for war, for programs and building things, that all creates more money, and in a sense creates inflation because that dollar is in a sense worth less. Also, as you borrow money for mortgage, well, the bank actually only has 10% of that in the bank, and then they're allowed to loan 10 times as much, which then creates more money into the supply. So you see how housing prices have increased so much because there's more supply going after those assets. So then, of course, it gets harder and harder for us to save up to own a house. Okay, and that's just the way the system works. Okay. And so, what do we need to do? Well, let's study what Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk does. Somehow through their innovation and hard work, they were able to build a company, and based on what they built, they get paid based on stock. So when they get paid based on stock, they don't get taxed on that because they haven't cashed out or sold that stock, right? And so what they do is they borrow from that stock, and then since borrowed money isn't taxable, they can then use that and pay low interest on their stock, and then use that money to buy another asset like real estate or another business or Twitter or whatever else that they want to buy that makes more money, right? And they can borrow from that again and do it over and over. So how can we get into this game where, can we just buy a stock and also borrow from it? Let me show you what we can do here. And so basically, I think we just talked about income versus stock compensation. So many billionaires get paid in stock rather than their uh, rather than getting paid directly as a salary. So that's what we get paid as a salary. If we can get paid as a stock and then borrow from it, that would be awesome. So if you go for a job and you say, hey, just pay me in stock, that's probably the best way to do it. um, Kind of gives me a good idea now. Yeah, so using stock as a loan collateral. So billionaires often use their stock holding as collateral, and so they're able to access low interest loans. It's kind of like an equity in your house because there's already collateral there. There's less risk because they can sell the stock or the house anytime you fall behind on your payments. Okay, but that way they can borrow from it and not have to trigger any taxable events. So they can pull billions out or millions out and not have to pay any taxes on it because it's borrowed money, right? Um, so you can take the loan against the stock, and that provides you with low interest rates compared to traditional loans. And then this enables you as billionaires to maintain liquidity, and then you can then minimize your debt costs, and then you can invest in other things. And as your stock continues to grow, you get paid more and more. Okay. So the thing is that as you take loans, they're not taxable, so you're able to then borrow more and more, and then you have less tax to pay because you actually have no income because it's all borrowed money. Okay. And so there's other ways to build these acquisitions. So like you use it for, you can buy stocks, you can buy real estate, and all these cost money to get into, right? But at the same time, you're like, dude, I can't even buy anything right now because I can't even buy food. Like, why would I even buy a stock and that I need to eventually sell again? And then I have nothing to, so I buy a stock and I have to pay the bills, so I have to sell it right away. Well, what's the point, right? So I'm gonna show you how to do that. Okay. And so you have the asset and the money to pay your bills all at the same time. So there are different accounts that you can sign up with, like I guess I believe is t Internet Brokers or whatever, and I think it was J.P. Morgan or whatnot, where you buy your stock and then you can get a margin and you can actually borrow up to 50% on the stocks that you have, and then we continue going up. You can borrow up to 50% again. If the value goes down, then it'll force sell you, and then you're good to go. Okay. All right. So also real estate. You've seen people get rich off real estate, and they're not the smartest people in the world. All they like, all I did was buy a couple of houses, and it went up, and then they borrowed that money out and bought more houses, and they borrowed it out and buy another house, and it keeps going up and up and up, and they keep doing it over and over again. Okay, and eventually, yeah, it does crash. But guess what? You've already pulled out so much money out of this thing where it's kind of like musical chairs, where if you can get out fast enough, then great. But getting into it is hard, right? It's another level of a playing field where we're not there yet. you know. So there's ways where you can also buy a life insurance policy. If you buy a life insurance policy, you're worth let's say $1 million now, and you can actually borrow against that policy based on what you put in as cash value. So there's ways of doing that, but there's still better vehicles out there. And I used to do this, but I eventually stopped doing it and then just work strictly with crypto now. So I use Bitcoin and decentralized finance, DeFi, to leverage. I can actually buy Bitcoin. I can start anywhere I want. I can start as low as dollar to $10. If that's all I have $100 laying around. I need to pay a $50 water bill. I can put my $100 in, borrow $50 out, and then it'll charge me about 10% interest rate on it. But guess what? I can pull that $50 out, pay off my bills, and I still have $100 as if the Bitcoin was still there, growing, uh, growing at 10 to 50% yearly. Okay, and so if you kind of model what Jeff Bezos does and Elon Musk does, this is how you play it in order to fight inflation. And the reason why Bitcoin is the way to go is because it's limited, and there's no CEO that can change the amount. And that's the promise that Bitcoin has. Um, you see that there's a government that promises you that this dollar is worth a dollar and it's backed by gold, but guess what? They print more. They change it to other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, other altcoins. Yes, they promise what they promise, but guess what? There's always someone as a CEO there that can change things. So if anything, you look at all the coins out there, the coin that doesn't change, that doesn't have a CEO, that doesn't have any say as to changing it, is Bitcoin. And that's the promise, that's the value that Bitcoin has, is that the promise won't change. And I guess if you're putting a Christian analogy, uh, if we follow Christ and Christ, and God said this is the promise, we'll follow him. But if there's a religion that says, hey, I say one thing that you get this unless, and I change my mind, you have to do this now. You're like, dude, well, yeah, keep striving and keep doing it over. It's not cool, right? So, if anything, all we're looking for is something that doesn't change, and the promise that they promise is the promise, okay, and it doesn't change, and that is what's valuable about Bitcoin. All right. If you get that, then you see it. If you don't get that, that's why they promise one thing and then they inflate another, and then you're working hard, the American dream, the home ownership, and guess what? You get into the home, and guess what? It doesn't feel like the American dream because they changed it, and they changed money supply, and they made the house worth, well, your dollar worth less because the housing prices keeps going up. Unless you get in, then great, you get to ride that wave. But at the same time, homeowners insurance is going up, everything's going up, and whatnot. Okay. All right. So practical steps for inflation survival is what you want to do is set up a Coinbase account where you can actually buy cryptocurrencies, and it's gonna be pretty straightforward. You got to set up make sure you verify your identity, you link your payment methods to your account, and then make sure you adhere to any security protocols or whatever that they need you to do. And then once that's set up, you want to also set up your crypto wallet. You want to buy the USDC. It's a stable coin. It's basically is a dollar represents $1. And then you want to then move that to Aave.com, which is a decentralized finance platform. And Aave is where people who have USDC, like you just bought, you want to earn a basic 10% on it. Then you can put that USDC on there and earn 10%. No other risk. You can borrow up to 95% of that. And then if you want a little more, and that can basically beat inflation, then you would switch that to wrap Bitcoin, which can earn up to 50% or more depending on how fast it moves. And then you take a little more risk because it can also drop and whatnot. But the potential of it growing is a lot better with a wrap Bitcoin. But then there's a little bit more work to manage it, which is okay. Then you switch it to wrap Bitcoin. Now you have an asset that, as the government prints more money, wrap Bitcoin will also rise with that inflation. And as it rises, guess what? There's more money for you to borrow. You can then borrow that US dollar back out and then pay your bills with it and go from there. Okay? So as long as you dollar cost average this, you'll be able to keep riding the inflation. And so you constantly dollar cost averaging everything. You have a water bill, pay your bill, buy the wrap Bitcoin, pay your bills, build up your assets over time. Okay? And then you have more electric bill, buy some Bitcoin, wrap Bitcoin, pay your bills, and then let it build again. Okay, so as you keep doing this over and over, you can start to build up a substantial amount of Bitcoin, and once it increases and pumps up pretty high, you'll have extra money to borrow from to pay your bills and do it over again. So if you have an asset working for you now, if you had paid your bills directly, then you would have nothing to show for it. You actually know Bitcoin, you kind of paid it, and you're like broke again, right? Now if you buy Bitcoin first, now you have something that's constantly working for you, like that house that keeps going up in value or that stock keeps going in value, and you keep borrowing from it to buy things that you need. Okay. Now we're just scraping by. We're just buying things that we need. Eventually, you'll have enough to buy another asset, something that would actually make more money, like another business investment or like an equipment for your business, or maybe another stock, or another buy more Bitcoin, whatever you need to do that's extra that would make more and more money over time. Okay. All right. So and then there's this question of risk. What happens when Bitcoin price crashes? Well, if remember you can borrow up to 70%. If it crashes 30%, you in a sense already cashed it out to pay off your bills, and I know you left 30% on there. If the value gets down below that, then you can continue dollar cost averaging in. As it goes from 90 to 80, you can still buy down, and sometimes that's enough to maintain, and then you have a little more of a distance for the price to move. If it crashes too fast, too far, too fast, then Aave will force sell half of your collateral or your half of your Bitcoin to pay off the loan that you've already borrowed and pay off the loan, and then you're fair and square. You don't have to owe Aave anymore because the collateral satisfied it. And then, how often do I need to make payments on it? Well, you're the bank here. You get to decide when to pay. If you don't pay the loan back, then the interest is continually to compound and build. But Bitcoin uh, rises 50%, while you're being charged 10%, then it makes sense that Bitcoin pays itself as far as interest goes. Okay, and so eventually, yeah, I mean, once it goes high enough, we have to follow the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin. When every uh, bull run, we'll kind of have an idea what the top is, and then we're going to start to dollar cost average out or sell the Bitcoin to pay off that loan, and then be left with a little more Bitcoin at the end of the day. Okay, so that's how that works. All right, so that makes sense to you. On the next lesson, we're gonna show you how to we're gonna set up a Coinbase wallet and I mean Coinbase account, Coinbase wallet also, and get that started. Okay. And when you go to questions, put your questions in comment below, and we'll show you how to get that all done. All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you then. Hopefully that helps.